So I'm going to welcome the first panel up to the stage. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. Woo! All right, so joining us on stage today, we have William Kramer, Transformation and Continuous Improvement Lead in-flight retail at EasyJet. Put your hand up, William. There's William. Daniela Ramos, Head of Onboard Sales and Service for Volaris. We have Job Heinrichs, CEO at Airfy, down at the end. John Harwood, Vice President Retail at Digitalising, and Oliver Ranson, Editor of Airline Revenue Economics. Right, so I'd like to start the panel off by getting a handle on what the market opportunity really is for digital transformation on board when it comes to low-cost carriers. Oliver, can you shed any light on this for us?
Am I on? Yes. Show me the money. That's the tagline from the hit Hollywood film Jerry Maguire. It's also the mindset that we need these days for success in aviation. Because in a world where chief financial officers have spent the last 50 years trying to save every single penny that they possibly can, the solution to more profitability these days has to be on the revenue side. So for me, this is the best place to start. The galleys, the seats, the in-flight entertainment systems, even the airport experience. Once upon a time, all of these were seen as cost centers. But the way we need to look at them as now is revenue centers, places where we can generate revenue and profit. And that's not always easy, but we can make a good start with the passenger insights, data we already have. And if we have that in mind as our key mindset, that we can seek to grow revenue rather than save costs, there are no limits to how far we can go, because as an industry, the amount of money we can save is limited to the amount of money we can actually spend. The amount of money we can earn is limited only by the power of our imagination. So that's where I'd make a start.
Thank you, Oliver. That was great. Great way to kick it off. Job, as a provider of tech solutions targeting this sector, I think this is also your mantra. Do you agree with Oliver? Do you have anything to add there?
Well, yes, I do agree with Oliver, but most important part here is also to be relevant and to make sure that that the offerings that we bring to a passenger is actually also fitting their mindset. So that's the big challenge. We call it the mall in the sky, and with the mall in the sky, we mean if we as a person, try to spend the weekend and kill time in the weekend with the family, you're also like man, wife, children, and everybody has their own idea of how to either be entertained, but also what shops are interesting and that kind of stuff. So bringing that relevance to the mix is also incredibly challenging and very important.
Thank you. John, as the retail manager for Donata Catering, who has hundreds of airline customers, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think from a Donata perspective across our 4 different business lines, we've got a catering, cargo, kind of ground handling and travel. The kind of customer experience kind of comes first. And off the back of that is to kind of driving the revenue and profitability off the back of that. And you've kind of got choices at kind of all end of the spectrum. And we work with everything from the full service airlines who 5, 10, 15 years ago, kind of ancillary revenue was part second, who are now looking at kind of digital opportunities and to the point of kind of beyond the galley. So it's not just the galley, it's not just the seats, it's how you can get into kind of these booking channels. And some of the technology out there is driving lots of improvements. And the airlines have a lot more choice now as to what they want to do. They can give stuff away to improve the customer experience, or you can monetize it and work with various suppliers across the board who will present a whole host of different ways of presenting content, customer experience offerings from every end of the kind of the customer journey.
Wicked, thank you. William, EasyJet recently completed deployment of the Airfy technology across 327, that's all of them, the whole fleet. Can you explain the why behind this project? Why was now the right time? Why did you do it?
Yeah, there's probably a few reasons for that. And I think probably the kind of COVID pandemic really probably advanced some of our thinking in that space. And I think if we look back to 2020, we had no paper brochures on board our aircraft. How could we promote our in-flight retail offering to customers? And that's, I think, really how our most recent thinking came about, launching the airfly proposition on board. But I guess in-flight entertainment in a portable way is nothing new. If you look back to kind of 2011, you could rent a tablet from us on board, and that was what streaming technology was back then. But now it's very much around what can you put on a customer's device, a passenger's device, and I guess building on from what some of the other guys have said around making sure the relevant content is on there. We really centered the current proposition around our kind of in-flight retail transformation. We relaunched that proposition last March. I think the platform that we've got now was really kind of fundamental to one of those key pillars to change that revenue generation over the coming years. We had to do something differently if ultimately we want to significantly grow the business.
Okay, and for those in the audience who might not know, what does the EasyJet onboard look like, I guess, from a passenger perspective when they come on? What are they presented with? How do they interact with it? What's available to them? What do you want them to do with it? And then maybe from the crew side as well, in terms of operating, any new equipment that you bring on board is going to be a learning process for the crew. They might have questions about, does this create extra work for me? So could you kind of explain, like, as a passenger, how do I experience this new product? And as a crew, how do I use it as a tool?
Sure. So from a passenger perspective, as I said before, everything is on the passenger device. Once the aircraft is airborne, they simply have to connect to our EasyJet onboard network in their Wi-Fi settings, and then this will take them to our platform within their browser. So everything is fully browser-based. There's no app download needed beforehand, because we know that from, I think, some of the other technologies we've launched in the past, if you need to drive an app download before your flight, your conversion is going to significantly drop off. So everything is browser-based. At present, we've got a replication of our in-flight retail brochure that would be in the seat pocket, but with some added benefits of kind of some enhanced content, whether that be videos, some additional images of products that you don't have and you don't have the ability to put within a paper magazine. Flight tracker as well. I think it's probably one of the best loved bits that we hear from customers. People just love sitting on it to track their flight, and also games. That's what we've put on for this initial launch, but we are soon to be launching our order to seat concept later this calendar year, and this will ultimately allow customers to order from their own device and have crew bring it to their seat. And I think I must caveat that, because you often hear people talk about order to seat. That doesn't mean removing the trolleys. The trolley service absolutely has a relevant place for us. The concept of order to seat is very much to drive incremental sales. I guess supplements what we do today. I think that ties quite nicely into the crew aspect of the proposition. I think why we selected AirFi to use and host a platform on board was, one, the portable nature of it. The boxes can seamlessly just sit in the overhead lockers. And it's as simple as crew having to switch a button on at the beginning of the day, and they don't have to worry about it. I think once you start putting workload into crew, you start coming to some of those challenges of, are you increasing their workload? Are you going to have to provide additional training? Kind of the fundamental roles around safety and serving our customers on board, and not all technology experts. So yeah, I guess as simple and a seamless solution as you can do is what we've seen, and it's worked quite well.
But the rollout of this program happened pretty rapidly. So would it be fair to say that, even with all these different elements, it was fairly simple to deploy? It's known to be a low-cost solution. Would you say that your expectations were met in terms of, hey, we want to get this running as quickly as possible. We don't want a lot of hassle?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's lots of different solutions in the market. And I guess one of our biggest drivers was a fully portable solution. And given we have 327 aircraft, if you had engineering downtime, you're talking about a multi-year rollout, and that just wasn't feasible for us. So one, looking for a portable solution was really important, and something that we could simply put on overnight, as simple as that. But I think for context as well, it's not just this put it on board. We first trialed 2021. We ran an order to seat trial on 6 of our aircraft. And I think the evolution of, then we selected AirFi to roll out across the network. And I guess from start to finish across all of those aircraft, it was less than 4 months, which is no mean feat, but a lot of prep work goes into that. I guess from our side, from AirFi side, the NATA side, making sure we've got kind of the necessary processes, the safety aspect as well will be really important too.
EasyJet's airline network is really interesting because Europe's quite a small place geographically, and it's characterized, so accordingly your network is characterized by quite a large number of really quite short flights, like London to Hamburg, for example, is only in the air for an hour and 10 minutes. How do you kind of use the IFE to make sure that passengers can really make the most of every minute they're on board, because you don't have that much time to play with like a long-haul carrier operating across the Atlantic?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've seen that in the rollout that we've done when we first launched. And as the proposition is still live on board today, customers can only access it once the aircraft is above 10,000 feet. What we're looking to do in the next few months is operate gate to gate. So actually allows customers that if you've got delay on the ground, unfortunately, that sometimes airports get busy in summer, customers can access that content at any point that they're on the aircraft. I think that's going to be, I won't say game changer, but a big unlocker in terms of the uptake for passengers accessing the platform, as well as then having the right content on there that makes it attractive for people to want to go on there.
I think one of the exciting things about the portable solutions is that they are a platform, so you can sort of use them how you want, based on what your mantra as an airline is, whether you want to improve retail or focus more on the passenger experience. We have with us here as well Volaris, and I think you're also working with the AirFi portable streaming technology, but with less focus on the retail and a stronger focus on the in-flight experience.
Oh, well, at the beginning, it was the idea to only focus on the experience, but we cannot say no to an extra revenue. And we have been installing this technology, and I can tell you, if it's challenging sometimes because of all the certifications and everything, we are very, very happy to know that it's very flexible, the technology, and it can just only to adapt to entertainment or sales or further experience when you arrive to the destination. So we are very happy with that.
And you guys also have a large fleet. It's over 100 aircraft. Did you experience any challenges with the implementation of this technology, whether it was with the operational side or the crew?
Not with the crew, because we were very, very focused on make all this implementation and the installations smooth as possible. But with the certifications, since we have FAA and other regulations in Central America, it's a little bit difficult, but it's worth it.
Okay, and John, from the catering side, I remember when portable streaming technology was first being introduced to the industry, a lot of people said, oh, it's going to be such a headache for catering. They're not going to get charged. People don't want to bring them on and take them off at the end of every day. How would you say that is from a logistical side? I mean, it's a big operation.
I think if you're taking something like EasyJet, where you've got nearly 30 bases and in the thousands of devices, it's a bit of a challenge to logistically get up and running. But from a caterer perspective, it's more around just taking the hassle out for the customer and making sure we've got the infrastructure that makes this work. It's a bit of a change in some of these units to have to put rooms in with chargers. So I think but in the big scheme of things, that's probably the easier bit to do is finding the space. I think our job is also to join the dots between the airline, the caterers, the technology providers, the product providers, the content providers, so that the airlines can ultimately make the decisions that make sense for them. And then at the end of the day, we get the boxes on and the right thing in the right place so the customer can experience what we promise. So it's a logistical challenge, but it's nothing that can't be solved with a bit of planning.
I think this is a really good point, because I've seen some airlines who've made the mistake of having somebody who has allocation for the catering cost budget killing the profit-making opportunities because they don't want to absorb all the costs. So I think for airlines who have the revenue-focused mindset, the profit-focused mindset, this is a key kind of obstacle to overcome. It's getting the catering cost mindset aligned with the ancillary revenue generating mindset, so that nobody can stop loading up trolleys or stop loading up IFE boxes because it's too expensive, because that may well hit their budget, but ultimately it's to the benefit of the airline. And I'd encourage anyone in the audience to make sure that you have both budgets looked at in conjunction, not separately, because you don't want to do a British Airways and lose a lot of money because you simply don't have the catering on board for people to buy.
Daniela, I wanted to come back to you. I think a really interesting part of your deployment is the way that the partners are arranged. You have another partner that's part of it called Planet IFE, and they're delivering the content, I believe. Can you explain the dynamic of that partnership between Volaris, AirFi, and Planet IFE?
Of course. We as an ultra-low-cost airline, we always wanted to have a third party that get us the best technology and the best partner for, in this case, the streaming on board. And also it will benefit our budget. Because I think this is something that we always worry about, and more as a post-pandemic situation that we have in all over the world. Maybe in Mexico, we have this culture that it's different than in Europe, than in other countries, but also affect us in terms of revenue. So we wanted to have this partner to get that budget for us and to get the best technology.
Mm-hmm. And do they take a lot of the hassle away from the airline as well? They're managing the program a lot. You guys have loads of airline customers. Is there a lot of incidences where there's like a three-party system, I guess, to get this stuff on board, where you're working with third parties to take some of the risk or the cost or the hassle away from the airlines? Is that like a big motivator for them to move ahead when they are concerned about budget?
Well, the problem is for any company, doesn't matter how big or small you are, is that the European situation is completely different from the Mexican situation, completely different from the Asian situation. And it's pretty much when in Rome, ask a Roman. And therefore having, again, a local party or a local partner that is able to actually sense what is relevant and what really catches is a direct hit, direct contributes to the success story. People that understand from their own experience, but also from their cultural experience, what you can do pre-flight and how you can, for instance, offers these services already in the pre-flight service, then during the flight and even after. And obviously the airlines can do that, but especially the LCCs, they have a core business, and that is running the machine. And partners like Donata that are also all over the place and therefore can provide local relevance. Planet IV from a marketing, from an advertisement, and from a product placement perspective as well. These people are essential ingredients to the mix.
Right. Yeah. AirFi claims that by enabling order to seat, which is sort of like a second step once you've got the AirFi system live, can increase onboard revenues by 20%. Can you talk a bit about that, where that number came from? And I'm curious to know if the other two, if the airlines on the panel have seen. I know nobody's using order to seat right now, but if they've seen any kind of improvement even without that aspect of the functionality.
Well, we've started with order to seat, almost unbelievable, but back in 2014 with a holiday carrier that was using this kind of technology for the night flight so that people didn't need to stand up if they wanted to have something to drink and wake up their neighbors. Then during COVID, this with their first release was with Scoot in Singapore, where this way of working came back to life. And then obviously I won't talk too much about the entire COVID saga, but that really fueled this kind of working. So we have done numerous trials throughout the world that bring these numbers to life. But you have to make a clear distinction between onboard retail, like fragrances, gifts, versus food and beverages. So they definitely have a different footprint and a different number. When customers are able to order or to look at the brochure and order things that they are interested in, you open the shop more. Essentially, you open the shop much longer than the time that you have until the trolley comes by, and you also open up the opportunity to order a little bit more while you are considering a good or then another good, because it's pretty much similar to a pre-order solution, but then instead of doing that before the flight, you do it during the flight, and when the trolley comes by, this pre-order is then fulfilled. But the timing is essential, and we give more time to buy, and that really contributes this increase.
Okay, Daniela, I was wondering if, by digitizing your onboard menus or presenting your products for sale through the digital system, have you noticed an improvement in onboard revenues?
Oh, well, we only have the 10% of our aircraft installed. So I think we're going to notice that on November. But regarding the in-seat ordering, I think we are aiming for that, because we have lots and lots of first-time flyers, and they are really insecure about flying. So they don't know if when the trolley is coming, how much it will cost. They don't see the prices. And the availability of menus, of paper menus, it's also a pain for us. But having this in-seat ordering, I think this will increase more than 20% of our sales on board regarding beverage and the boutique products that we have.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when it's ready. William, have you guys seen an uptick so far?
As I mentioned, we trialled on 6 aircraft working with AirFi, the order-to-seat technology. And I guess probably wouldn't say we saw specifically those kind of height of those numbers, but we certainly saw some interesting, passenger behavior in terms of how they interacted with the proposition. And I think we're taking our time to make sure we launch it properly, because I think there's big cultural change for crew and equally passengers and what they're used to. And as I kind of always explain to my team, and as you mentioned about the EasyJet network, it's quite diverse. We have flights that are under an hour. We have flights that are up to 4 hours. With order to seat, there's no one size fits all. It can't always just be it'll be turned on at a certain point in the flight, or it's either always on. And I think it's trying to set the message and expectation with what customers can expect on board. We ran some customer research last year, for example, and customers told us that if they ordered an item, they would want it delivered in 6 or 7 minutes. Now, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to heat up a hot item. So you're never going to meet their expectations if that's what they're expecting straight away. So we have to be quite careful in terms of our messaging and how we promote the platform, to be quite clear that then they're not then bombarding crew with, I've ordered something that's not come yet. And I think we're going to probably be looking to test some things over the coming months to make sure when we do fully launch the proposition, we've got it right and it lands well first time.
Oliver, as a person who spends a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff, do you think order to seat is going to be the new thing? Is it going to change the game for the low-cost carriers in particular in terms of onboard revenue?
The great thing about all of these retailing concepts is that they allow people to give airlines their money and feel happy when they're doing it. So when you and I, any one of us, buy a ticket to go somewhere, we want to spend as little money as possible within certain parameters. Maybe we want to have a flatbed to Asia. Maybe we want to have we don't mind an economy class or EasyJet flight within Europe. But the point is that we want to minimize the ticket cost. But by the time that we actually get on the plane, we want a good time. Our holiday or our business trip has already started. Maybe we're with friends and family or colleagues. Maybe we're on the way to do something interesting on the way back from a great time at Aircraft Interiors Expo, and we're ready to celebrate. So people are ready to party. They're ready to splash the cash. An order to seat enables this. But it doesn't enable it on its own. You have to have the logistics in place. Just like John was saying, you have to make sure you actually have on the plane what people want. So I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm sure it's very different by market. Some people love gin and tonic. Some people love pizza. Some people love Madonna CDs. It's up to the airline has to use its understanding of the market and its data to figure out what to sell. But order to seat is fantastic because it's another way of making people think, yes, I want to have a good time on this flight. I'm happy to be flying EasyJet or Volaris or anyone else. I'm ready to spend some money. Everyone benefits that way. The customer benefits because they feel like they've had a better flight because the airline's given them something that they've enjoyed. The airline has a great experience because they've managed to to have a revenue opportunity, and the whole it's really a complete game changer for the whole travel industry, because it's making people happy to spend money rather than, and it gets us away from this horrible trap of having to spend as little as possible when we fly. So it turns it turns the aircraft themselves into revenue generating platforms. And I think this is going to be really exciting, and that the ordering from the seat is an important part of making this happen. I'm delighted to see it, and I'm looking forward to using it many more times in the future myself as well.
I think just probably to add to that, when you say people are happy to spend, I think it's about making it easier. And I think particularly with something like order to seat, it becomes like technology that people are accustomed to on the ground, buying online. And I guess extending that shopping opportunity, you talked about, Job, of at the minute, you can only make a purchase when the crew come past of you. But if you're asleep, you're in a toilet, for whatever reason, you maybe feel like you missed out. But actually, if the potential is then to order and spend money for the whole duration of your flight, absolutely unlocks kind of greater revenue opportunity and ease from a customer perspective.
One thing that I think is really strange about airlines as an industry is how we've grown up with this legacy kind of model where the so-called full service carriers have a complimentary catering. And I'd kind of ask the audience, would you personally rather have something that the airline gives you for free that you don't really want, or would you rather pay money for something that you actually do want and is and you really enjoy? That's I think where we need to go as an industry. When you go to when you fly first class or business class or long haul economy, you get a free meal, and that's all well and good. But when you go to a hotel, you don't expect a free meal. When you go to a pub, you don't expect a free drink. Why should it be any different on an airline?
That's an excellent question.
I think from a kind of a caterer perspective, and previously being an airline, I think you've almost got two industries within one, where the airlines do want to differentiate and give a product away as part of their service, as part of their offering. We've also got the kind of retail model where you want to monetize that. And I think those two are starting to merge a lot more. And we've got airlines who previously wouldn't have spoken to us about retail, and now saying, actually, well, what could we offer? What could it look like? And it's not just like I said before, the galley and giving out the food. These tools and systems allowing them to give opportunities to sell and give choice. And I think that's seeing not just for the caterers, but the airlines, what IATA are trying to do around the GDSs. This is kind of the digitization is only going to go one way. Even at the likes of AirFi, these boxes are as kind of essentially closed loop intranet. But in 5-10 years' time, I think you're going to be very surprised getting on an airline and there's not connectivity. So I think order to seat being a prime example, that's just one tool for the arsenal. You've got to use it correctly, because there's no point turning it on and then the crew don't engage. But it's like anything, it's just adding value and deciding where you want to be on the spectrum, from giving product away through to selling, through to pricing, and getting kind of that profit versus revenue. And then from a caterer, the complexity versus efficiency versus money, that's where our kind of job is to help that out.
So one of the things that I find interesting with Volaris is that they managed to actually include the onboard experience within their entire booking process. So they actually are able to actually have the passenger think about all aspects, not only like pre-ordering, but also pre-ordering even the entertainment, and reward the passenger for doing that during the booking process. And then it's still possible to do it later on during the flight, but at a different price level. So that's something that is unique to the Volaris approach versus the EasyJet approach.
And just to add to that, I think that's a key bit around a lot of airlines. You've kind of got to reverse engineer the sales opportunity back into the booking channel. And I think that's going to get better and better over the years as well. And the more we can do that and get, whether it's kind of car hire, movies, food, there's more opportunities to kind of do that. And from the looking for a flight all the way to the flight end and loyalty, there's lots of joining up to do that's still pretty fragmented.
There's a lot of things I want to come back to here. We've got sort of this end-to-end experience, which I think was touched on really well in the plenary session this morning, about making better seams, maybe not trying to get rid of them, but make better ones. So how this all ties into pre-flight and post-flight, the data play, and how that helps us do better catering, loading onto the aircraft, reducing weight and everything. But I really wanted to come back as well, like real talk about the crew with order to seat. So we kind of talked about the platform itself as it stands on both airlines is very easy. The crew don't have to do anything. But the minute we introduce order to seat, we introduce, quite a big change to the dynamic of how, I guess, the crew moves around the cabin and how available they need to be to passengers, how tied they are to their devices. It's not just a payment device or a source of information anymore. It's almost like a pager now. So how do we manage that and make sure that these guys are happy? I'm sure commission plays into it, and that's a big opportunity. So I'd love to hear from both airlines what their thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first, and I guess we're probably still going through that process, to be fair. But I guess just engaging with the crew up front and early as possible, and I guess ultimately them being part of developing that process, because it's great for us in an office to say this would work great in the air. But actually, crew are the ones, I guess, day to day kind of delivering that proposition, and I guess that aspect of potentially running multiple test flights, trial flights, that's something that we're very keen to do to make sure we can, I guess, get that feedback from crew and build it into the proposition. And ultimately what we see across our network, again, the diversity of it, the customer demand that we see on board from sales is very different from the north of England, for example, to the north of Italy. The propensity to actually want to buy on board is significantly different. And I think that's, again, where it comes to there's not one size fits all. So how we can give the best guidance to crew to deliver an order to seat proposition, but with this element of consistency. Because if you're a passenger and you've got an EasyJet aircraft, you don't care where the crew's from, where the aircraft is from, you just see it as EasyJet. So our job is to make sure that we deliver that kind of consistent customer experience as many times as we can.
Great, thank you. Danielle?
Well, what we see in Volaris is that for us is in-seat ordering will be a success product because we have a lot of flights longer than 2 hours. So after a normal trolley service, then you can turn on the in-seat ordering, and then you will get that extra revenue that you wasn't getting. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe for those flights that are between 30 minutes and 1 hour and a half, sometimes you don't get to get the trolley out of the galley because it's too short, and the in-seat ordering will open an opportunity to sail. So we see that would be the next phase for us.
Okay, and do you think your crew will? How receptive do you think your crew would be to that? Would they be earning commission, or trying to upsell, sell additional things to make money for themselves, or have you thought that far into the future?
Oh well, we have another partner that we have talked with them about this because we are giving all the service with the other partner, and together with Airfi, we can't increase the commission because there's one part is a normal service that the sales that are nowadays we are having, and the other is together with Airfi. So there's an increase in the commission. Of course, there is. Right.
We're sitting here today in the Passenger Experience Conference, and to some extent this is a bit misnamed because great service isn't just about the passengers, it's also about the crew. And when airlines are looking at how to make people happy on the flight, they should also be looking at how to make the crew happy. When I was working at Qatar Airways, we did a lot of work on galley design, both in terms of the layout of the standard units, ovens and trolleys and all of that good stuff, plus also the way they were loaded to mean that everything was in a place where it's easy for the crew to find. So, you kind of proceed, you don't kind of have to zip from one side of the galley to the other to get things at the same time in the flight. You kind of work through the galley. Good galley design is so important to giving a good onboard experience. And you can really tell the airlines who really care about the passengers based upon looking at their galleys when you're on the planes. So, for example, fly on the Cathay Pacific A350, and I know this is a bit long haul within the context of this discussion, but you'll find about 250% more galley capacity than IAG have on the same aircraft. And I know that the Cathay Pacific stage lengths might be a bit longer, but 250% more standard units is a significant number. I think IAG have made a massive mistake not having midships galleys in their A350s. It tells me that they don't really care about their passengers and they don't really care about their crew. Cathay Pacific, on the other hand, they've got a great working environment. Everything is well laid out. And the crew that I've spoken to on my flights on that aircraft have seemed very happy to work with it. So I would say, this is the Aircraft Interiors Expo, and don't underestimate the impact of good galley design to really influence how happy crew can make passengers happy.
Okay, thank you. Very quickly, just want to touch on data and loading, since we're talking about galleys and galley design. I think one of the proposed benefits or the key benefits of this sort of technology is that we can learn more about the passenger. We get faster access to data and reports on what they're buying, not just what they're buying, but what they're looking at. We can monitor their browsing behavior before they go to the checkout. So they may have looked at an item for a long time but not bought it. Why? So I just wonder, I guess from John in particular, how, is that data coming through already? Is it being used? Or are we not there yet? What's the ultimate, what would the dream sort of situation look like in terms of using that data to improve operations?
Well, I think there's probably two parts to that. I think from a retail kind of the low cost perspective, the sales data and what sells and what doesn't is kind of always kind of been there. But I think with this kind of move to kind of AirFi and the onboard connectivity, you kind of want to combine that sales with, like I said, how long the passengers on the systems, what they're looking at, where are they ended up going through to kind of making the purchase, kind of the basic e-commerce stuff, but now it's in the air. So I think that's a big change. It's kind of our job of trying to work out, is it the order to see? Is it a range change? Is it because a brand's put a marketing opportunity onto AirFi? It's trying to join the dots and understanding what's driving the benefits. And with somewhere like EasyJet, you've kind of got 100 million passengers down to a smaller airline. That's absolutely key. And not so much data, but it's providing insights and being prepared to make kind of changes. So that's absolutely kind of where we're trying to get to around kind of getting those incremental benefits and what's because with an AirFi, you can get it rolled out reasonably quickly. We've got a basic service, but if you're trying to get it integrated into the airline websites, the order to see the booking channel from day one, that takes a bit more time. So it's the level of complexity you're trying to get out and then what change you want to drive at the back end. But it gives us a whole load more arsenal with data.
Wicked, thank you. I realize we've only got about 10 minutes left for the session, so I just wanted to turn to the audience and see if anybody has a question. No? Yes. Should I? You got it. Oh, okay. I'll sit down. Just David, hi.
Hi, I'm David. I'm from Simple Aviation. I have a question on something that some of you touched on during this presentation as well, in regards to red-eye, late evening, and early morning flights. Because when we talk about in-flight sales and ancillary revenue, we probably all of us were thinking about flights that take, around this time of the day, early afternoon, you're getting a coffee, you're getting something to eat. But what is being done, especially to increase revenue on overnight flights, on early morning, on red-eye flights, in terms of the product offering, but also you talked about the possibility to order directly to your seat, increasing the revenue. Is that an effect that's more significant on overnight flights, that people are more willing to spend money on when they're staying awake? And that's all. I feel like that's a question that all of you could add some value to.
Well, I'm happy to kick that one off. We touched upon like being the crew friend. We touched upon like the ease of not ringing the bell if you and the shaming of ringing the bell and having this little red light up on top of your head, especially on the red-eye flights. So when we did this long time ago for this holiday carrier, the number one feedback that we got was that the crew was incredibly happy and also happy to facilitate the bringing the coffee to the people that were actually awake, because it prevented the entire passenger group of the people that were awake to hang around the galley. And that was the number one thing that the crew really disliked. So in order they could say, stay in your seat, and we'll bring it to you, instead of that they had numerous visitors hanging around the galley all the time.
I did a project on this for Qatar Airways. It's a very interesting question because there are different breeds of overnight flight. So a flight that goes from Melbourne to Doha, leaving at 10:30 in the night and arriving at something like 6 o'clock in the morning, is a very different beast to a flight that leaves Doha at 3 in the morning and arrives in London at 7 in the morning. Not because they're not both red eyes, but because the time on board the flight is so different. So what Qatar Airways was, the problem they had was they needed to decide, do we want to, on the Melbourne to Doha flight, we have to have enough food for people to have 2 meals. It's a 14, 15-hour flight. It has to be there. There's no choice. But on the Doha to Milan flight, it's only a 5-hour flight. So, the Doha to Heathrow flight is maybe a 6-hour flight, but the same applies to some of the other European routes, Milan, Rome, Barcelona, and so on. So the question was, should the airline prioritize dinner or should the airline prioritize breakfast? And this was actually this was the sort of thing that only the CEO can decide. There is no right or wrong answer. Well, at the time I was there, and this is about 10 years ago, I remember presenting the options to the CEO, and he kind of looked at it for a moment, and he was quite sure. He said that we should prioritize the dinner service because if people want a breakfast, they're arriving at 6 or 7 in the morning. There's plenty of opportunity to get a breakfast, but maybe they haven't had a dinner when they get on the plane. In terms of, and I think that the same kind of logic applies to retailing as well. You have to think carefully, not just about where the people, what the people are going on the flight are going to want to consume at that time, but also where they're coming from. So these flights that leave Doha and go to Europe in the early hours are more popular with O&D Qatari originating traffic, whereas the flights that leave at other times are more popular with connecting traffic, which means that the passengers coming in from Asia are simply not on those flights. So they don't need breakfast because they're on the flights that arriving at a different time, a different arrivals bank. So much better to have the dinner service because because people who are leaving the Middle East are in a mood for nighttime snacks and exciting type things like that, rather than a breakfast. So I hope that gives some insight into how Qatar Airways thought.
Thanks, Oliver. Okay, I've got one last question. So far throughout this panel, I think we've been assuming that this aircraft is not connected to the ground in any way. So very quickly, just wanted to see if anybody has thoughts on where we can go with in-flight retail in particular once there is a pipe to the ground. How does that enable us to sell things that are not on the aircraft, provide better service, etc.? William?
Yeah, I think a real-time connection to the internet would unlock a lot of opportunities, certainly from a retailing perspective, to maybe sell onward travel, digital services and products in real time. And clearly the reduction of the credit card declines, which is a significant driver of that business case. I think from a passenger perspective, I think I'm trying to understand what's the right need and the demand there, particularly again on a short haul airline, and our average flight length is 2 hours. Does a customer want the all singing and all dancing connectivity solution, or would actually they be happy with just a messaging service? I guess we don't have all the answers to that. I think that's trying to understand of when does that become a big enough need and a want from a customer, and actually it's then as an expectation that airlines need to have that connectivity.
Yeah, I think that day is coming. That day is coming very soon.
To give you an idea, this is really, really exciting. So the potential for data connections to the ground are huge because imagine, for example, that you've got a passenger in a stretcher who's traveling for medical reasons. You can actually transmit data about the status of that passenger to the incoming hospital in real time. And this is, of course, very valuable for the hospital. It's very valuable for the passenger because it means they're more likely to get the best treatment they need when they arrive. And people will pay for that. It can be a source of income as well. When I was working with Airbus on the connected cabin, this sort of thinking was very much where they were going in terms of collecting data and transmitting it to the ground. And I see huge potential, not just for making everyone's lives better, but for monetization as well in this space.
All right. Any final questions from the audience before we wrap this panel up? That sounds like a no. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. That was really excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for that. Moving along, our next panel is an interactive roundtable. We're going to be examining what happens at the intersection of streaming quality connectivity, increasingly sophisticated onboard digital services, BYOD and BYOL, and some other words that I can't read. So I'll have the next panel the next group of panelists come on up, please. If they're here, I've got Andrew Moore from Panasonic. There he is, Andrew. David Whelan from Valor Consultancy. David? Not here. Okay. Arnd Kicker from AirQ. I think I saw him just walk in. There he is. Ben Murphy from Intelsat. No. Oh, yes. Thank you. He's here. And Chris Demand from Viasat. Oh! Come on up. You guys can grab a seat. I know some of you are competitors, but you can sit together. Oh, we also have somebody from Air Canada. Right, Ben. God.
I don't think so. Yeah.
No, not coming.
Had some travel delays, so I'm not sure he's going to make it.
All right. Well, we have a smaller group, but it'll be a great session nonetheless, I'm sure. Right. So I wanted to kick things off by just kind of going across the stage, ask everybody to quickly introduce themselves and share with the audience what, in your view, the passenger traveling in the second half of this decade expects from their digital in-flight experience, because that is our theme this afternoon, the second half of the decade and meeting expectations. So introduce yourself and I guess tell me what you think or your organization's view of their expectations about 5-10 years down the road will be.
Okay. Is this on? Hello? Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Ben Murphy. I head up Intelsat's North American sales and account team. Been with Intelsat / GoGo for over 16 years, 25 years of telecom experience before that. And brought 5 different generations of technology to aircraft over those years too. It's been a fun experience, and now we're on our next chapter with our next antenna system and satellite orbits as well too. So as far as what to expect in the second half of the generation or the second half of this decade, look for it's moving at a rapid rate at this point too. We were geo only or some sort of ATG variant for a number of years. Just the rapid growth in the LEO space now is really changing the industry. And we see MEO also. MEO's out there already in some permutations. That's going to continue to grow. And that's where we really see, from a customer experience perspective, demanding that as a part of the portfolio and a part of the system that airlines are installing on their aircraft to enable some of those new services.
So connectivity is the expectation.
Connectivity, reliability, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Arnd, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel here. My name is Arnd Kicker. I'm the managing director of AirQ, which is a joint venture of Lufthansa Technik and LG Electronics. And we were founded roughly 4 years ago with the purpose to digitalize the aircraft cabin mainly. And for us really is to push digitalization and to minimize, to close the gap to what people and passengers experience on ground to what they today experience in the aircraft cabin, because we believe that there is a significant gap as of today. And the expectation will be that this is nearly similar to what we have here on ground for the time being. And our solution, which we are currently building, our Arena suite, is set out basically to push this closing of this gap. Because we believe that it really is the theme from entertainment into engagement, because engagement is driven by relevance, and then passengers really need to have the right and the relevant services on board, and then the airline can use that engagement basically to push and to enter really the world of ancillary revenues to a larger extent as of today, because we believe that this captive time on board is something an airline really need to unlock, so to say. Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's, so to say, the closing of the gap.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi, Chris DeMange from Viasat. So the obvious answer coming from Viasat is they expect connectivity, but the more extended view of that is they just expect an intuitive experience that works. They don't expect to have a fragmented experience when they go on board that doesn't match what the experience is on the ground. They expect something that's intuitive. They expect to be able to connect and have available to them all the services that they normally would have available to them. So basically travel without compromise.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Moore. I head the Digital Solutions Business Unit at Panasonic Avionics. Probably two major trends, similar to what's been spoken here, but really a focus on personalization. And it's not the first time I think that topic's come up in this industry. People have been talking about it for a while, but practically, 1-2% of the IFE flying today really has the capability to actually do something personalized. And that makes it so much an outlier compared to every other digital ecosystem in the world where you have an account, you have a relationship with the content provider or whatever service provider you're using. And IFE, you sit down and the seat doesn't know you at all. And for the topic of relevance was brought up earlier. To create relevance in the digital space is to really form that relationship with that customer. And so not only is the experience more interesting, more engaging, but this is an enormous opportunity for airlines in terms of cutting into loyalty program, the airline mobile app to actually be the broker for this. So we actually see another part of this being the increased use of mobility as part of the interplay of the IFE experience. One is to segregate use cases to where they're most friendly for the user. I mean, I could order something on my phone and not have to interrupt the movie while I'm doing that, things like that. But also the airline app now has this whole new life where the dwell time in an aircraft is exponentially higher than it would be, checking my boarding pass or going to the website. So it literally is like I think a whole new generation of what we're going to expect in IFE, and personalization really is going to drive that, and I think mobility too.
So you think using the app on board more effectively is going to
yeah. I mean, the ironic thing about an airline mobile app is that in 90+% of the cases, it does nothing on the plane. So the time that you're actually spending most with the airline, the app is the least relevant. And that's something that really speaks to a huge opportunity to do something different.
Hi, my name is David Whelan. So I'm a senior analyst at Valor Consultancy. So we kind of primarily do market intelligence and consultancy work across the mobility sector, but primarily in aviation. And that can be kind of, ranging from helping vendors kind of do a competitive product assessment, or helping airlines go through an RFP process and select a vendor for connectivity. We're across kind of a few different kinds of topics, but primarily from my side, it's been in-flight connectivity and in-flight entertainment.
Okay, and what do you think the passenger 10 years from now will expect their digital experience on board to look like?
I think one of the big things for me, and it's kind of come up as we've been speaking to a lot of airlines, is just the shift towards like a free model and just trying to create that kind of seamless experience for passengers. So I think, the impact that could have on the take-up rate that we see for connectivity, is obviously quite profound. And as we've got more and more capacity coming online, there's obviously, there's increasingly the capability to deal with that. So I think that's really kind of the key trend for us at the moment that we're looking at.
Right. Okay. So connectivity is important. We know it's coming. I don't really want to get bogged down, I think, in this panel over the LEO, MEO, GEO conversation. I think that hybrid solutions are going to be out there. Some people will always think one or the other is better. One's the workhorse, one's the new thing. But at the end of the day, to the passenger, it doesn't really matter. One thing that does matter, like you guys all said, is removing friction. And I know that one connectivity player, a new one in the industry in LEO, who's not here, SpaceX, is doing like a walk-on totally frictionless access. When the passenger goes on the plane, they don't have to do anything. They're just connected. But I know that doesn't work for every airline. It doesn't work for everybody. Some countries have regulations that make that totally impossible. So what are some different ways, I guess, that we can present the in-flight connectivity to passengers where, maybe there is a step or two to get access, but it's pleasant, or maybe they have to watch an ad, but it's not so bad. And I'm just kind of wondering what everybody's different position on that sort of, how do we get them online quicker and easier?
Yeah, I mean, one, it just needs to improve. It's inconsistent, if you're flying one aircraft to another, and it's been a friction point with airlines for years too. Is how do we improve that? How do we get people through that process and that flow quicker? One thing that was touched on before too, with enabling new services in the app. Just thinking about free service and how free service is distributed. It was talked about it's going to be free to all. Everyone's going to have it. Well, everyone's appetites have changed a little bit over the last few years, and now it's more of a loyalty play, as you've seen with Delta and you've seen with other airlines too. So using the app for distributions of like entitlements, like free sessions and things like that, they know the airline knows who that person is. It's easy to actually get them through the process. We know the device, and we know how to get them through the user flow quite a bit quicker too. I see much more value there on a go-forward basis.
So back to the app again.
Yeah.
How many, I don't know if Valor's got data on this, but how many people actually have an airline app? And how many people keep that app like in between flights or even think to open it on the plane? I mean, I think that you've got to do a lot of work to make sure everybody's got the app. And then you've got to do a lot of work to make them even think to open it in the plane. Because like Andrew said, you don't look at the app when you're on board. So I think it's a great idea, but it's not like that right now, is it?
But if you're going to tease somebody with some sort of free service that they're going to be able to access through an app, your adoption rate is going to rise. It's the same thing with loyalty and getting people to sign up to loyalty because they know that they're going to get free service. And that's what airlines are doing across the board right now. Whether it's like a free messaging app or it's free streaming, whether you're watching an ad to do it or not, the airline is in much more control with an app than they are with just trying to get somebody through like a portal flow and get online too. They have a lot more control.
I think that varies from airline to airline as well. So some airlines are very aggressive about informing customers about the ability to download the app and advance the flight, the benefits of it. And we've seen it from our different customers. The airlines that are aggressively pushing apps and digitalization, you see higher take rates, you see higher usage of different services that are on board. So, I think that trend's going to continue with other airlines as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, this is very true. It depends a little bit on how much the airline is promoting it, how sophisticated they are in communicating it. We launched with Singapore Airlines a personalization service where they actually rebranded ChrisWorld to MyChrisWorld. And the landing page on the IFE system is literally a login or pair your phone. So that kind of promotion, and they do that, you'll see that screen when you're on the ground, so you actually have time to download the app. And so that's going to play a really key role in it. We've seen where people have the most success with an app playing a role in the cabin. It's the degree to which it's been promoted.
I'm just going to say, I think that's a really good point in terms of how it's communicated and branded to passengers. Because I know I've seen quite a few instances of airlines still kind of packaging connectivity bundles as kind of in megabyte bundles, that kind of thing. And I think, for a passenger kind of getting on an aircraft and they see a 200 megabyte bundle, they don't necessarily know what that translates to in reality. So I think just being kind of clearer on exactly what the passenger's getting, I think will help as well.
Mm-hmm. So we're definitely moving towards a model where there's more connectivity, more of it is free. So this idea of the captive passenger is very quickly flying out the window or out the antenna. So I'm just wondering how we bundle content around connectivity in some sort of engaging portal so that people are possibly diverted away from using the bandwidth at times, or they're still engaging with our brand, because we still don't want everybody streaming at once. So you want to try and lure them away from that pipe, I guess, with some of your own content. So, I'm curious how everybody on the panel is thinking about using cached content in conjunction with connectivity in a way that doesn't feel like you're trying to limit the passenger from using that bandwidth?
Maybe I start here. We believe that the better the connectivity is, the better the services on board will be, because then you have basically the full range of services. But the reality will be, and is today, that this connectivity is not always given, or is not to a certain extent that you can enjoy the full broadness of services. So you need to have curated content on board, which is as relevant as possible for this dedicated group of people there. And therefore, we believe that specifically that the curated content is as customized towards the group of people being on board is very, very important, so that the relevance again is pushed, because then the engagement starts with the whole system. And we touched the integration of the app, for instance, because the integration of the PD, of the mobile phone, or of the iPad, or whatever that is, needs to be as frictionless as possible, because otherwise you have like two competing infrastructures and you have to combine them. So there must be a coexistence between your personal network, your personal suite as your phone, and the system which is provided on board. Because when there is no connectivity, then there is no phone, so to say. But when there's a lot of connectivity, there's a lot of phone, or a lot of own network or own suite. So there must be very intuitive and very frictionless integration of both systems. And again, the content which is on board must be as relevant as possible for this dedicated group of people. And therefore, it needs an infrastructure and technical that an airline can push content to the aircraft in days, or even in hours maybe, and that they can change the content on board. And this is basically not available as of today, because we all know that like data flows into the aircraft cabin, specifically when you think about in-seat systems, is a very, very long time. So the speed of changing content on board is critical for that.
And what would be determining the way this content is curated? Are you talking about like location, geographical information, destination, and departure city? Or are you talking about, actually getting data now from the booking engines or other information that we have about specific mix of people on that flight to feed that content in? Because that is really feeding into personalization, but it's not anything I know of happening at this time.
No, this is not happening as of today. That's the end game.
This is the future.
That's the end game, so to say, when you really have the most customized content curated on board for that specific flight, for instance, or that specific route.
So using the booking data,
for instance, or that you know who is sitting on that aircraft, and that you have the history of what has been used, and then you have A/B testing of the services, and when the people or when the passengers start to engage, and you know what they are picking up in terms of services, then you can really basically have the right content on board. But as I said, you need to have then the technical infrastructure as well, that this content is then also being able to be pushed on the aircraft, and not that it takes weeks and months in order to change content on board, which is the situation as of today.
So
that's I'm sure there's other people who want to add to that.
I have a lot of thoughts on this particular question. First off, I love the question, the whole premise of it, because if I think about these panels 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the thought was, will streaming on board ever even be possible at scale? Right? That was the thought. And now the conversation here is, of course it's going to be possible at scale. How do we prevent people from doing that? And that's not our position. We love the idea of the world that everybody has the opportunity to stream at scale. And we believe that we're delivering that today for our customers, and we want that trend to continue throughout the industry. That doesn't mean that curation becomes less important. And it doesn't mean that there's not a value towards live events that maybe aren't available through streaming, through traditional Netflix streaming and partnerships like that. It doesn't mean that stored content doesn't have its own opportunity. So I see a converged world where it doesn't matter the source, and it shouldn't matter the source from the passenger. They want a good experience on board. And to the extent that the best experience is the fact that the last episode of TED just dropped, and they want to be able to capture that on board, we want to stream that to everybody. But the very next day, if there's a soccer match on, we want to be able to have that be able to stream, via their live TV offerings. And if there is a movie that the airline wants to promote, I think that's all possible. Curation completely allows that to have a unique branded airline experience that brings the best of all content to the customer. Because, like it or not, what's happening in the industry is there's more fragmentation going on with these streaming services. And so customers now have availability to more content, but they don't necessarily have subscription to it all. And the airline has a huge opportunity to create their own brand, their own passenger experience that brings the best content that they want to curate for those customers. And it's independent. And what they need are providers that can be somewhat agnostic, but not limited as far as what those content choices are going to be made available for the passenger.
There is something so magical about getting on a plane. If there's a good IFE system, even like with no connectivity at all, and just exploring through, if it's really well curated. I love looking at the indie gems or, our picks, It's quite fun, and it is very exciting. Not so much now that you can get the stuff straight out of the cinema on your television. I think a few years ago, before all that started happening, it was a little more fun because I loved getting on the plane because I was like, oh, I can watch the movies that aren't available
or even
yet.
Content that you've heard about, you want to see, but you don't have a Prime subscription, for example, and there it is on board through a stored offer versus the streaming option. Right? That's all I think valuable to the passenger and valuable to the airline experience.
So you don't think at the end of this decade, for example, that people will say, look, don't tell me what you think I should watch. Don't give me anything else. I'm just going to get on Netflix and do what I want. You think there's still value in providing a curated experience?
I think that there's a lot of passengers that want to watch what they want to watch, and they're going to watch it the way that they want to watch it. But there's also a lot of passengers, myself included, that like to peruse and see what else is available.
Yeah, I just add to that. I mean, I agree. We offer a mix of, we have large servers on board. We have huge libraries of content, and some people really enjoying that. They can go and explore whole, seasons of television shows. They can see, every franchise repeat of like a Marvel movie or something like that. And there's some real attraction to that. And we don't want to use connectivity for the foreseeable future for that sort of content. But if we do know who's on board, if there's some sort of history with the customer and what we think is going to be, their preference, what we want to look at is more like edge caching and dispatching. And we're getting to that point. So it's not, terabytes that we're trying to push down the system, but it's literally maybe a couple gig that handle the hottest release that just came out. Now, some of the challenges here, it's not the connectivity, the business models will have to modify as well. We did an interesting thing on personalization with a customer where we enabled the capability where if they were, let's say, the top tier of the loyalty program, it actually unlocked a library of content to them. But what happened is they couldn't get a license that adjusted for that. Mm-hmm. And so it was either they paid for it all the time, and it's like, do you really want it? So there's business models that also have to come along with this. It's not just the technology enabling it.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity when it comes to licensing content. So one of my questions out of curiosity is like, what is the role of the content service provider in all of this? And I know that you guys are not necessarily right in that particular part of the business, but it's all tied in, isn't it? So like, where do you see them fitting in 10 years from now?
Well, in a way, we sort of are. I think anybody in our sort of position you're almost by default going to get backed into it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And because we do live TV streaming, we've been doing it for a long time over Panasonic connectivity. So there's a little bit of curation in there. There's a little bit of selecting the right things for the market. But we are essentially a content service provider in that regard. But I think that's going to open up, and airlines probably are going to have more access directly just because of the diversity of content and things becoming a bit more hyper-local. I think the content, we're really used to movies, TV shows, that's about it, but the whole snackable media world that's really taking off so huge, and it's just having such a small presence so far in IFE, and I think that would change.
I was going to say, I think it's a really good point on like more like regional content, and I think something we're starting to see a little bit more of is kind of airlines, particularly like flag carriers, kind of promoting some of the content that's kind of more local focused. I think particularly if you'll find somewhere new, I think there's a lot of passengers would have an interest in kind kind of exploring like a kind of best of, of the place that they're going to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, when we're talking about content services and rights and licensing, to a lesser extent licensing, you have to focus on the price, the cost to the airline too, because it's not insignificant. And with the rise of streaming services becoming either cheaper or free, the place for some of that curated content, I'm not saying it will go away entirely, because there's still going to be some portion of the cabin that is maybe not going to have a streaming service that they subscribe to, that they'll be able to get onto, perhaps, older population or younger population in some cases, and they're going to want something to watch. But I do think unless we have like a rich seatback experience too, where you're investing in that, you're going to invest in content too. But if it's just streaming to PEDs, I see that kind of not going away, but being diminished over years.
I think that's interesting, because I feel like the in-flight entertainment system, or that onboard experience, is such a great opportunity for the airline to engage using their brand with the customer. That to me, it seems like a big shame to just open up the pipe and say, go do what you want. It's such a missed opportunity. So I am interested to see the way that we can kind of marry these things together, so that the airline can still communicate their brand values and engage with the passenger, but give them what they want. You guys all shared some notes with me before the session, and Panasonic and AirQ both really felt that connecting throughout the entire journey with the passenger is going to be really key. And I think that was a big focus as well in the plenary session this morning, increasing the touch points, looking at the whole journey. So I was just wondering, how do we, as sort of in-flight technology people, how do we get that passenger at home? And how do we start connecting with them there and sort of draw them into our in-flight experience, make it all seamless? And then I think more interestingly, I'm like, how do we get them at the destination? Because I know me, when I'm done with the plane, I'm done with the plane. I don't want my IFE system texting me on my holiday. So I'm curious how that post-journey part, how you imagine that looking.
I think we touched on that topic already, that the integration of the in-flight experience into the whole travel journey, starting from the inspiration, from the booking, and then the airport, and so on and so forth. So the app, the airline app, will play a significant role here. The homepage will play a significant role. The login with one ID will be very important, so that you really can carry the passengers through the whole journey, including the in-flight time. Because that's exactly the spot where the passenger as of today is lost. There is not anymore available digitally. And as you just said, when then the pipe is open, this passenger is owned by, I don't know, iOS or something. Yeah, it's not owned by the airline at that point in time. That's very dangerous, we believe, specifically for some airlines who really see that the experience and the capturing of the passenger throughout the whole journey is very important for their business model. And this needs to be integrated basically in all in one system, in one data system, that an airline really can follow that from end to end. There are some technical challenges associated to that, some data challenges associated. GDPR topics are very, very relevant on that topic, so it's not an easy one. And I think it's going to be a journey, and it's not going to happen in one step. And the second part of your question, how can you basically stay connected to your passenger when he's at his destination? For instance, destination services you can promote on board. That basically you can use that angle, so to say, in order to basically stay in touch with the passenger at the destination. But this is also all linked to this digital journey. I mean, we have that today already on ground. We experience it every day with our devices and with the ecosystem we are in. And we have to bring that into the aircraft cabin as well.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yeah, I think to the point mentioned earlier about mobility, and the increasing relevance of that. And the one thing that's a continuum through that whole travel is having your mobile device in most cases. And something we do today, it's kind of a modest use case, but I think it speaks to the future, which is, we have the APIs, interfaces to the IFE system built into the airline app. We know we have ground servers that'll serve up, here's the library for the movie. So the customer gets a notification a few days before saying, just like you can select a seat and select your meal, select your content. And so we can give them the whole library there. They can make a playlist. You can even go into things like, choose what default language you want for your moving map, stuff like that. And this profile can stay with you. And then what happens is you get on the plane, you pair your device, that playlist is there. You don't have to see the movies you don't want to. You don't have to navigate through all the things that are irrelevant. And then, so that's part of us extruding the experience a little bit. I mean, clearly our main relevance is in the cabin, but how can we bring that out to start that relationship? And then I flew Air New Zealand at one point where I was listening to a lot of the audio. And then after I got off the flight, I didn't even know we did this, but I got off the flight and I was in the cabin. I got an email and it says, here's all the music you listen to. And you think of the potential for that, because if you tied that into like a Spotify affiliation or iTunes or something, you can actually monetize that. So this role that we can play, it's really about embracing a mobile device, embracing the airline app's role in that perhaps, or this communication, and just stretching it out. But I would say our relevance certainly is going to be primarily experience-wise in the cabin. But those are ways we can help. They're small use cases, but I think they really speak to paths forward for us.
Great. Let's talk about regional jets. I think we're going back to the connectivity story here, but this has been largely, a lot of these jets don't have any in-flight entertainment. They've not had any connectivity, or sometimes they do. So they've had some, go-go systems installed on them. But now I think this is like a final frontier, isn't it? Everybody's like, oh my God, there's this giant fleet of regional jets that don't have antennas on them yet. And I think everybody's kind of scrambling to get in there. So, I'm curious, how important is that to all your airline customers to create a consistent experience with the longer haul fleet? And how important do you think it is to customers to have the same experience on the regional jet as the long haul? David, I don't know if you guys have got any research or data that shows how badly customers want to see these kind of services on the regional market, or at least to know the size of that opportunity for people like the folks that are on this panel.
Yeah. I mean, no, not from a data point of view, but kind of anecdotally, what we've heard is, I think, from a passenger perspective, they don't really care if it's a regional jet or a narrow body. If they're flying with a certain airline and they're used to a particular experience, then they kind of expect that to be, consistent across the fleet. Even though the flights are so short, like if it's like half an hour or 45 minutes, are those people still like, why can't I watch Netflix? I think perhaps with entertainment, I think they would probably expect a bit of a difference. They obviously, you're less inclined to watch a 2-hour film, or if you're on a 1.5 hour flight. But I think where connectivity is available, on a narrow body flight, I think, typically people probably would then expect it again, from the same airline. I think it will increase. I think that will be a driver for it for sure. And as you said, there's probably 2,000 kind of coming up to 2,000 kind of connected regional jets at the moment. Most of those air to ground, and I think there's a huge opportunity for sure.
Yeah, there's a huge demand from my customer base for it. We still have the resident GoGo ATG system on over 1,000 jets out there. That is, something that we designed actually before the iPhone was introduced too. So just to get, give you a little perspective of usage demands has skyrocketed since then. And that's
the airlines who did put the GoGo on at the time. They did very well with that. They really differentiated, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, and especially with the regional market too. I mean, that was a second wave too. It was primarily narrow body, wide body in some cases for transcon flights, 767s. But to the airlines that were kind of first movers on putting the air to ground system on their regional jets and being able to say we have the most connected aircraft in the sky. I mean, they kind of battled between two major domestic carriers. But I wouldn't just limit it to the regional systems and air to ground too. There are also like outdated first generation gimbaled systems that are out there that can't kind of keep up with customer demand too, and those are also need to get migrated out too. And I think we'll see, both of those platforms change quite a bit in the next 3 to 5 years.
And do you think that'll become ubiquitous, or it will just be really?
Yeah, I see no reason why not at this point. I mean, the systems that we're introducing to, the ESA that we're introducing that provides gate service, you can do live TV, speed tests over 200 megabits per second, doing LEO, with 100 milliseconds or less latency too. I think customers will start to demand that.
And so a lot of people have said, well, the business model doesn't work for regional. You can't sell the Wi-Fi to cover the cost of the service, but you think that once it becomes a demand, it won't matter. The airlines will just have to sort it out, basically.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever really seen as like a revenue generator. I mean, there were some airlines that thought and I'm not even talking about just regionals, but you also have to think about regionals. They don't just fly 20, 30-minute hops. They're flying 2-hour hops in some cases too. So that demand profile is different, ranges all over the place. And it's not like you can segment off aircraft and say, okay, well, these are going to be the long haul regionals too. So you have to have that same offering. Because that's just how the airline operation works. You have to be able to interchange aircraft and deliver that same experience.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're talking about the passengers of the future and some futuristic ideas, and we're all about to move into the biggest trade show of the year this week, and I'm sure everybody's got some cool stuff on their booths that they're getting ready to show. So I was hoping everybody could just maybe share with us one thing that you're showing this week. Could be a futuristic concept, something really cool. We've seen projectors in the cabin and biometrics and, fake windows projected on the wall and heat sensing seats and stuff like that. So, what's the coolest thing that's going to be on everybody's booth this year?
I think, for us, I'll just lead off too, and it is primarily focused on our new antenna system that we're bringing to market. But not only just the antenna itself, that antenna delivers a bunch of things. It's low profile, it's lighter weight too, so there's a sustainability element to it too. So we're playing that up quite a bit and have data on just how much carbon offset that can actually translate into too. So we've got that element, but it's really about the changing user experience that we saw during COVID too. Our user base was, business travelers, as I think everyone on the panels were for, the first 10, 15 years of this business. And that's evolved during COVID. We saw a lot more leisure travelers and a lot more leisure travelers actually using the system now too. So that's a younger base. Their expectations are different. They expect the system to work more like it is on the ground, with lower latency and being able to doom scroll and all the things that like lower latency actually does enable too. So those are some of the things we'll be highlighting.
Thank you.
Yeah, for us, it's hard to pick, so to say. We're going to have our first system flying by early next year. So we're going to show the seat integration at the show, which is for us a really big milestone, because obviously being a startup in this environment is a challenging thing. And now we are really entering into the phase that we are delivering what we are promising. We're going to showcase our ground experience. So for the airline, really the ability to curate and to design and shape the experience in the aircraft, which is connected via the cloud. And then we have a highlight from a hardware standpoint, a transparent OLED, which is integrated into a class divider, so that basically the cabin attendants can watch through, but there can be content while flying. Yeah? So it's pretty cool. So pop by at our booth, and then you're going to see it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Viasat, what's new at Viasat? All right, so we've had a pretty busy month. So we just launched our Viasat 3A satellite. So that is the largest communication satellite I think ever expected to have been delivered. So terabit satellite. So as we think about the themes that we've been talking here today, this is a satellite that really provides coverage all over North America, South America, out to Hawaii, and coverage over to Europe. It's the first of our three. So that is essentially providing this global framework to bring the services that we've been all talking about, streaming for everyone. So on top of that, we closed our acquisition of Inmarsat last week. So Very excited to meet the new Inmarsat/Viasat employees and customers. So it's a whole new game changer in terms of the industry and the amount of innovation that we can bring to our customers. So we're super excited about meeting each other's customers, meeting each other this week, and really talking about what's ahead for the future.
Sounds like a big celebration for you guys this
Absolutely.
week.
Let's see, on the system side, we'll be having a press event tomorrow at 8 o'clock, so I don't want to spoil anything, but the enhancements to the Ostrova system that we debuted last year at AIX, so that's our OLED-based in-flight entertainment system. So it's been hugely successful. We'll give a report on that and some enhancements that we made to the system. And then on the digital side, it's not so much things we're most excited about right now are not so much like kind of a gizmo for the passenger, but it's IFE to really change the business value to an airline. It needs to really be modeled more, the digital side, more along enterprise tools. So we look more like being like an Adobe or a Salesforce or something like that. So we've got two tool sets, one called Modular Interactive that allows airlines to take control of the interactive once we deliver it to them. And for those familiar with the business, this is a major choke point, is being able to control and update that. So it's the first authoring and publishing system for interactives in the industry. And then the other is called App Manager, which is a new generation app development environment. So basically between the applications and the interactive framework, the airline can basically take all that over. So we'll have demos and updates on that tomorrow as well.
All right, and David, you guys haven't got a stand.
No.
Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to talking about this week?
Yeah, I think more broadly, like I think we might come onto it a little bit later if we got time, but yeah, I just think there's quite a lot happening in the like cockpit and cabin applications kind of ecosystem at the moment, and connectivity's kind of got the potential to really unleash that. So whether it's like in-flight fuel optimization or or kind of cabin management solutions. It's there's quite an exciting space. There's a lot of startups operating in that segment. So that's something I think we're quite keen to explore here.
Great, thank you. We've still got a few minutes left, but I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. I knew there'd be one from over there. There's two over here.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jack. I'm with Life in the Air. And this question, I guess, is geared towards everybody. I think, Andrew, you might have just touched on it. But I look at you guys as platforms. And, what are you doing to open up? I've heard a lot about what you guys are doing for the customers, which is awesome, which is great. But what are you guys doing to help open it up to allow the airlines or their agencies to provide services on your platforms that you may not want to offer or just haven't gotten around to it, or, you guys have a lot of customers and we're hearing from some of them that they want to do things that isn't possible. But, with startups and, niche businesses, what can we do on your platforms to help everybody?
Yeah, that's actually really our core value proposition. Yeah, our system, our platform is open, so we're going to provide an SDK and API environment where anyone basically can develop and can adapt to our system and can basically deploy then to the aircraft. And we're gonna push that because we believe that the openness is really the key value contribution. Because that what happened everywhere, that always the openness is the success story, and that's where we're out for. Basically, and airlines, third parties, so anyone can basically provide services and bring them into our environment, and we're gonna bring those then to the aircraft, basically on the premises of the airline. The airline at the end is the deciding factor. They need to know what kind of content they want to provide to their passengers, because that is driving their brand value, that is driving their business model. So we are set out to give airlines really the choice, the control of what they're doing with their passengers.
Go ahead. Well, I would say, just like I touched on at the end, what I called App Manager, that is our developer program, and that adds virtual machine capability to our traditional SDK API environment. And I mean, we make apps ourselves. We have a lot of customers that just want turnkey, but absolutely, customers want to be able to do their own things. That doesn't mean that we don't develop a lot of digital to support that. Because if you look at a modern OS platform, iOS or whatever, there's video services, there's map services, there's data, there's all sorts of things. So we really focus on those. Even e-commerce, we have an e-commerce sort of pillar, so people don't have to go build these from scratch. So that's why it's actually the thing we're most excited about is enabling that. That's why we brought it up. Yep.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, we started in a B2C environment with GoGo, where we did restrict some of the access to airlines actually directly marketing. That's evolved over time. That's a relic that's gone. So what we do now is we host airline applications. We have a suite of APIs that they can plug into and really drive the customer experience themselves, because they know it much better than us.
I'll say from the Viasat perspective, we embrace that open framework. So we realize that there's no one company out there that can really deliver all the applications that customers expect and demand. We have a Docker framework and Kubernetes to help download applications quicker. It's a place that has been historically not really the focus of I think most of us here, just because large customers driving very specific products. But as we think about the new generation, we think about the new apps and just how quickly they need to change and update, and how each airline is unique with their requirements. We absolutely recognize and embrace the idea of loading third-party apps onto our platform to help enable it.
Hi, Seth Miller from PaxX.Aero. Hi, guys. Conversation earlier about content and curation versus the pipe and sort of expanding and just people picking what they want to watch. Is there a point we get to that as providers and as airlines you enable access to that streaming content rather than depending on the credentials of the passenger? And I know there's been some very limited experiments, we'll say, with that, and in some cases cached content not actually streaming from streaming services, which is super cool, I guess. But are we moving in that direction where, in addition to being able to buy movies from Sony or rent movies from Sony for the month on your plane, you can say, hey, everybody gets Netflix this month and everybody gets Paramount Plus next month and Max the month after that? Is that going to happen so we aren't dependent on the passenger paying?
Yeah, I would say as you look for more and more free service penetration in the market, airlines are looking for ways in which to deflect that cost. And to the extent that they can leverage a partnership with a HBO Max this month or a Netflix, the following month to cover some of those streaming costs. And I know that goes against Netflix's business model, but I think with competition, everyone's a little bit more open to that at this point too. So we definitely see that. Now, when it comes to like a Netflix library, I think you touched on caching. It takes such a robust server at this point just because of just how big that catalog is. So there'll be some challenges there, but I mean, you could do something very light touch with HBO new content too. That's going to drive most of the views. So I could definitely see sponsored sessions like that in the future.
I'll say it's already happened, and it's continuing to evolve. So Viasat has had a relationship with Apple Music in the past, where customers on American can get access and stream Apple Music. Delta announced their Delta Sync program with Paramount Plus, and to enable Paramount Plus type streaming on board. We have a relationship through our partner with DirecTV, where we can get Thursday Night Football, which is normally an Amazon Prime offering, but we can stream that live on board. So it's happening. The models are extremely complex from a legal perspective, but to the extent that these legal barriers are, I don't want to say so much broken down or breaking down, more of people getting more comfortable and understanding the legal framework and how to work through it, I think you're going to see a lot more of this in the future.
I think you covered the main things. I was going to mention Paramount as well. So it is breaking down. Some of it's through caching. We can actually store a lot. And if you kind of look at an 80-20 rule with a major streaming service, you can actually host the stuff that people really want to watch, whatever's hot or recent. You can probably store that on a standard server. So a lot of it really just has to do with licensing models, which, yes, are complex, especially if you operate in global environments.
All right, fab. Any more questions from the audience? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Oladi Olukolu, PD21 Solutions in Cabana. I think I'll go probably a loaded question. So the first one will be, do we agree that the pace at which passenger experience and the digitization of the cabin has been directly related to the cost? Now, I haven't really heard anyone talk about how the cost of the passenger experience, I mean, of course, from the offering that you talked about, for example, the satellite, the 3A satellite, it means that the airlines would have to pay more. Whoever wants to get on the platform would have to pay more. Now, we're talking about the new customers, the new generation of passengers on board the aircraft. And you look at people from the ages of 20 to 25. You talk about a 5 to 10 years. These are the guys that'll be going a lot more on the business trips and want to be able to interact. Now, sorry, I'm just trying to get it all out there. You don't have to answer everything. Now, you also look at the fact that people want advertainment rather than just entertainment. If I'm flying, I got Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, my kids, whoever it is. So we can pre-download some of the episodes we want to fly with. So whether we're flying on a narrow body aircraft or we're flying on regional jets, we already have pre-downloaded content, okay? So it means we want actual pertinent content about the destination which we're flying into. We want to get offers about where we're flying into. We want to understand how you can inspire us to fly again with that airline. So if you charge the airlines a lot more because of the development cost and all that you used to put in the systems out there, it's almost killing the whole purpose of having to, to prepare for the passenger of the future. I'm going to stop there. I've got a lot more, but I think people are probably tired of hearing my voice now. So if you...
Who wants to go? I don't think it is cost right now. It's complexity, it's evolution, it's changing customer expectations. We've been able to offer free streaming to passengers. JetBlue has been doing it for, I want to say, over 10 years now. It's shifting customer expectations, and there's certainly a cost to provide free internet, but if you look at the different models that are out there that are evolving, some airlines are offering completely free to their passengers. Some are using ad-sponsored type models to help offset that cost. And then there's also models like what T-Mobile is doing in the United States, where T-Mobile customers are essentially getting free streaming video, and that's courtesy of the T-Mobile, their rate plans, right? So they pay for it through their rate plans and bundling type of opportunities. So there's a lot of ways for airlines, depending on where they're at on the spectrum, to be able to move towards a free streaming enabled model.
I would say for the longer term, let's say 10 plus years, the jury's still a little bit out in terms of, these sort of systems. And, I've been in the business 30 years. People have predicted the death of IFE like over and over, and the business has just gone up. But I think what's interesting is you look at, you talk to a lot of different industries, and what we basically have here with IFE is we have digital signage placed in front of the customer who is literally strapped in front of it for hours. All right. And so many industries would kill to have this opportunity to stick their channel, like with no discretion. I mean, that's the issue with the pet entertainment from our perspective, is it's very discretionary, but this is sitting there. Yeah, you can turn it off, but it will be on for most people. And, it's on us as suppliers to really bring the new economies to that. And we haven't done that yet. And we really need to. And part of that's the enabling them to do their own stuff, because we're a choke point. IFE suppliers who insist on doing all the apps and all that stuff, we're a choke point to the real business creation. And there's one industry that actually did a fascinating job with web, mobile, and embedded together, and really turned that into loyalty, like intense loyalty, and changed the value prop, which is Tesla. There's an embedded screen there, doesn't move at the same velocity, doesn't get upgraded as fast as your iPad. You've got your phone, which is a very integral part of it. Website, maybe not so much. But these three things work together, and that's been hugely successful for Tesla. I mean, that's a phone on wheels. They're not great car craftsmen, but they're great car technologists, and that's where cars have been going. And so I think for us to really change this is to look at how they did that and to completely change the value that we bring through IFE, because it is a like necessary evil, got to entertain them on long flights, that can be changed. And I would consider that sort of like our number one priority.
Well, I think that's a wonderful place to leave the session today. Unfortunately, that's time for us. But I want to thank all the panelists. I think that was a really great discussion. And thank you, everybody who asked questions.